Thank you, MJ, for pulling off this event. Thank you all for making time to be here for a TED Talk. And Justine, thank you for the inspiration of your talk. That was really impressive and wonderful. And I'll be thinking a lot about your important words that you shared with us today. So I want to follow Justine in a couple of important respects. One is I want to talk today about building a library. That will be unexpected. I do want to tie it back to health and wellness since we are in Wellness Week. But fundamentally, I want to talk about something that I'm passionate about that is outside the Andover bubble. And it may surprise you to know that your head of school, like every member of the faculty, has interests and activities outside of 01810, which is true. One of the things that I'm working on every day, even though it doesn't relate directly to Andover, is building something called a Digital Public Library of America. So like Justine, I was involved in and recently started a nonprofit organization, and it is the DPLA Inc. And the basic idea is that in the United States, we don't have a national digital library. So you saw the physical library that was being created in Cambodia. We have a history in the United States of having lots of libraries in lots of different towns. And you may know this history. It started actually really primarily with Ben Franklin in the 18th century. And Ben Franklin came up with this amazing lending library in Philadelphia. And then in the next century in the United States, we have the Boston Public Library. If you've been to the BPL, it is the first big major public library in the United States. And at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a guy named Andrew Carnegie, and he gave a whole bunch of money to create little libraries in towns across America. And you may wonder why they all look very similar. It's because Carnegie gave money to towns, and he also gave them architectural plans to say, build a library like this and we will pay for it. That's how we got public libraries all over the United States. And maybe Justine is the Carnegie of Cambodia. We'll see if you pursue that dream. But one thing we don't have that lots of other countries have right now is a national digital library. So across Europe, many countries have built digital libraries for the 21st century. Turns out that in South Korea, there's a terrific digital library, and we don't have one in America. So a group of us 2 years ago in October of 2010 said, we need a digital library for the United States. And why is this? Well, I think it's pretty obvious why we don't have one and also why we need one. And these are two important facts. The reason why we don't have one is we actually don't have a national library in the United States. There's the Library of Congress, but it's actually a library for Congress. It's not a library for the entire country. And it turns out that the entity that did the most to create a digital library in the country was Google. Google went around to all of the big, or a number of the big university libraries and said, give us your books, let us scan them, and we'll put them into a library. And if you followed this story, you may know a few years ago, Google did this, Harvard and others participated, and they immediately got sued. They got sued by the authors and the publishers, and basically the Google Books project, though you can get access to some of them, has been halted because of this lawsuit and the subsequent settlements. So in our country, we don't have a digital public library. And so a bunch of us over the last 2 years have created an entity that is going around to lots of different libraries, and we've started with the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian and the National Archives in the federal government, and then big libraries like Boston Public Library and New York Public Library, and a bunch of universities. And we've said, what if we all got together and scanned our books and put them into the cloud and created a way for all Americans to be able to access the knowledge that's here in these amazing places? The benefit for democracy in the United States would be huge. And increasingly, as people continue to read things in digital format more and more frequently with every passing year, people are going less and less to take physical books out of libraries. So as we make this change from an analog period to a digital period, it's crucial for the fate of, I think, American democracy that we create this kind of an entity. Why is it so important? Let me make a very, very simple case why we have to do this. So if you were to go and buy a new book, I was just given a book, this one by Dr. Salman Khan, called The One World Schoolhouse. If this is published by a big publisher right now, if it's by one of the 5 of the 6 big publishers, if you are a library and you want to lend out this book, and you say to the big publisher, I want to lend this out as an ebook, most major publishers will say no. We will not sell it to you as an ebook to lend it out. You can buy one copy, as you have in the past, and lend it because the law allows that, but we won't give you an ebook. So increasingly, publishers are saying you can't, as a library in a digital age, do what you did in the physical era, in the analog era. So they're saying by virtue of contract and other law, we're not going to let you be able to be a library in the digital era to give out all these books. So increasingly, as people get readers and people get ways to read online, you're not going to be able to have access to all the books that you've had in the past if the market continues to run this process. So I think it's totally crucial that in the United States, we actually get our act together and create a national digital library. So that's the effort that we're engaged in. In April 2013, we will launch this. We've raised several $1 million for it, and we've got partners from the federal government to all these different libraries. We'll see if we succeed. It's a very complicated matter. We talk more about it at another time. But I think this is an effort that is worthy of all of our working toward. Okay, so how does this relate to health and wellness, and how does it come back to Justine's story? So I'm a huge enthusiast for the digital era. I think we have many opportunities that we haven't had in the past because of the digital environment, and I'm a big believer in it. And one way in which I'm a believer of it is for health. Does anybody wear one of the Nike Fuel bands? You've ever seen these things? So Justine had a bracelet up there, and this is my bracelet, which is the Nike Fuel Band, and it is a way of tracking your steps every day. So it's like a pedometer. It has steps in it, but it also tells you how many calories you've burned, and it also tells you how much fuel you've consumed. So it turns out that if you're running along, that consumes more energy, obviously, than just walking along. So I think there are technologies like this which are extremely helpful to getting us to be better in terms of health and wellness. And every day I sync this up on my computer into the cloud, and on Nike I can share, how many calories I consumed and so forth as part of Wellness Week. I think it's kind of fun to do. And if you have your friends seeing you, they can egg you on when you miss a day and so forth. It's very depressing when I miss my goal, which does happen from time to time. And I think these are really positive changes. But I also think that it's really important that we reflect on the world that actually isn't digital. And this seems to me that one of the things we can do in this moment of transition from a world that's predominantly analog to one that's predominantly digital is to say what's important about the physical experience that we have. So go back to libraries for a second. Even as we rush to read ebooks on devices like the iPad and so forth, it's really important, I think, that we realize what a great technology the book is. Turns out that this technology, the physical book, has lasted for thousands of years. And if you reflect also on the fact that with digital formats, often digital formats go away much more quickly than the physical ones do. So I don't know if you were old enough, any of you, to remember things like floppy disks, but when those of us were using computing in the 1980s, there were 5 1/4 and 3 1/2 inch floppy disks and so forth. If you have lots of stuff, Mrs. Elliott and I quite sure have a lot of information, probably our old transcripts and stuff are on these disks. They're totally unusable, right? You need an old computer to stick it in. You might think about CDs. Many computers that you have now won't play a CD. You think about the flash drives that you have today. They may not be useful in a few years. And if we have all of our material stored on those kinds of digital devices, and the format changes every couple of years, as they do, there will be many things that are obsolete. We won't actually be able to get to information. So the government has lost a whole pile of information from the 1960s in the early computing days because we can't play it back right now. So I think one of the things I wanted to leave you with in my little TED Talk was the importance of the physical and the importance of the face-to-face. And I think that from a health perspective, as much as I love these gadgets and I love the digital world and I like saving this up to my Nike Plus account, and it actually does help me, encourage me to do more steps every day and not ever get in a car, I think it's crucial to remember that it's actually the face-to-face, and it's actually reading things in a physical format, and it's actually the life that we lead that is outside of the digital that's really important. So for my own kids, who are 10 and 7, I really limit how much time they go online, as much as I love it and as much as I'm trying to build digital libraries. And I kick them outside and say, you must play soccer for the next hour and do other things that make sure that kids are leading a life that is outside of the digital and has nothing to do with the digital. And after we saw Dr. Moss earlier this week, who told us not to read you're on your iPad for the hour before you go to bed and so forth. I think there are many great reminders of the importance of living in the here and now and experiencing life outside of the digital environment, but in the physical, just as we go fast, really fast, toward building a digital environment for lots of good reasons. So my final message to you is remember your health, remember your wellness, of course. We do want to embrace the future and build the digital future, but live in the physical present. Thank you so much.